Good morning and welcome to the next episode of our podcast,
where we drink tea and navigate the balance between school and personal life.
I'm Sophia Safe.
And I'm Sophia Curry.
And this is Sip and Spill.
Welcome back to the Tea Journal.
The topic we'll be touching on today is trauma and how we respond to it.
Just a quick disclaimer and trigger warning, this episode is a rough one. We will be talking about some pretty heavy subjects involving trauma.
In addition, Sophia and I are not experts by any means, so if you feel you need help, please contact a medical or mental health professional.
Also utilize the Suicide Prevention Hotline by dialing 998, mental health resources and ways to find a mental health professional, which will be provided in the description below.
So let's start by defining what trauma is.
Okay.
So, according to the APA, trauma comes as a result of any disturbing experience that results in significant fear, helplessness, disassociation, confusion, or any other disruptive feelings intense enough to have a long-lasting negative effect on a person's attitudes, behavior, and other aspects of functioning.
So, one of the things that I really want to touch on, and this is important, before we dive deeper into this, I want to let all of our listeners know that me and Sophia have conducted thorough research using credible sources and utilizing mental health professionals.
Absolutely.
And we will link all of our resources in the description below you can further explore them.
Along with our resources, we're also going to be linking the Suicide Prevention Hotline down below as well.
Yes. Okay. So, to continue on with what Sophia was saying, one of the things to note is trauma is not, specific to, major, events. It could be something smaller, like, a pet dying, or something bigger, a natural disaster, or losing your home, or a fire. So, it's all more about how the person perceives the event rather than the event itself.
Absolutely. Trauma usually affects how someone is to view the world.
Yes.
So, for example, if your pet were to die, like you said before, you may be able to see that pet in every animal's eyes that you see. Let's say you lose a cat. In every cat you see, you might see a glimpse of your pet.
Yes.
That is passed.
It can also alter your perception in ways that, because of traumatic experiences based on how one processes and deals with it. You might block out certain memories of a traumatic event or be triggered by certain things in a space of safety when in reality you're in a space of safety, but you feel scared or unsafe.
Right.
So, to touch more, like we had said before, do you want to list out the different types of traumatic events?
Sure. So traumatic events can include natural disasters, accidents, and, for example, war, as well as some adverse childhood experiences.
So, yes. So you are most impressionable through the ages of 0 to 17, which is where those adverse childhood experiences occur. So those can be a whole host of things like, household dysfunction, addiction, different stuff like that, or even smaller things. And again, like I said, trauma is more broad than I think a lot of people think it is.
Absolutely. And because it is so broad, it's also very easily discredited.
Yes. And I think, people have different views on how one should go about dealing with trauma. And I think a common misconception is, learning to avoid the triggers and learning to avoid remembering the experience, which is not necessarily, or not necessarily, it's not the best thing to do.
No, it's a little healthier to address your triggers and being able to see where you might need more help.
So here are a few statistics. So 64% of U.S. adults reported that they had experienced at least one type of ACE or adverse childhood experience prior to the age of 18.
17% of the U.S. population has experienced 4 or more types of ACEs.
So, ACEs can include abuse, which is physical and emotional.
Neglect, which can also be physical or emotional.
And then, like I said before, household dysfunction. This can include mental illness, an incarcerated relative, a mother treated violently, and substance abuse. So, these are all things that I feel like in some form or another, people have experienced, maybe firsthand or maybe from an outside perspective, because I think, with the use of, again, social media, we're all more aware of, these events happening.
Absolutely. And in addition, there are a lot of common disorders that go hand in hand with trauma, such as PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, adjustment disorders, and so on and so forth.
Yes. So let's break down some of the symptoms. So initial reactions can be exhaustion, confusion, sadness, anxiety, agitation, numbness, and more.
More severe symptoms can include prolonged distress without a period of relative calm, severe disassociation, intrusive recollective, even after a return to safety. So Sophia mentioned this before about feeling unsafe, even in a safe environment, and that is one of the more severe symptoms of trauma.
Yes. And typically one does not, hold on to these feelings as long, and, PTSD is common, but the most common result of or recovery from trauma is usually more shorthand, and it's not as effective as PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
So, trauma in teens, let's talk a little bit more about that.
So, a common experience in teens after a traumatic event is going back and forth between the feelings of independence and insecurity. This can be an extremely confusing experience for teens.
Yes.
I mean, being teens ourselves, I feel like going in between independence and insecurity is something we go through almost every day.
Yes. And one of the things I read about when in this article that I had pulled this information from was, as a child, we recognize the need for our parents and that we literally cannot survive without them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you become a teenager, we are able to identify ways that we can kind of make it on our own. And again, like Sophia had said, identifying that independence versus that insecurity.
Absolutely. I mean, being freshly 16, I just got my learner's permit, and Sophia is soon to get her license.
Yes.
This is an extremely new sense of independency that we've gained after being driven by our parents our whole lives until now.
And even in just scheduling things, I think, like, earlier we were scheduling interviews for the podcast, and I realized I could drive myself to the interview.
Right.
And I was like, because I was worrying about whether or not my parents could take me, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I could drive myself if I had my license by then. So, even in normal circumstances that, balance between finding your independence is something that teens already struggle with, adding that layer of traumatic event or that added layer of trauma can really be confusing, not only for the teen, but for the parents as well who are trying to deal with it and already kind of have a sense of security because they can take care of themselves.
Absolutely. So let's move on to recovery.
Yes. So in trauma, your body goes into a state of emergency that allows one to access a lot of energy in a short period of time in order to, quote, survive. So this is, basically your fight or flight response.
Adrenaline is coursing through your body.
And, this state usually only lasts for a small period of time or until the threat has subsided.
So normally the body comes out of the state and restabilizes in about a month, which is a surprisingly long amount of time for restabilization.
Yes. But that's usually, if it's a traumatic event and your body has experienced this, you're kind of coming down, not, in the moment your body is releasing all that adrenaline, but you're also coming down from that emotional distress in your brain and kind of fixing up all those emotional and mental emergency signals in your brain and kind of recentering and stabilizing yourself. So it makes sense that it can take around a month. However, that's the typical amount of time. Prolonged senses in PTSD, again, this can occur again and again with reliving the experience and feeling threatened by triggers and other stuff like that.
Absolutely. And PTSD recovery usually requires the help of a mental health professional.
So when we talk about, how we respond to this, I think typically teens can have healthy versus unhealthy responses,
Absolutely.
Of course, there's always, the very common ones of self-harm, suicide to escape the thoughts. But, there's also shutting down, not talking, not being emotionally responsive.
Disassociating.
Yes. And I think that's a really common one in teens is disassociating because, we have a tendency to push things aside.
Right.
And we're not necessarily aware of how, you can best handle things, if you know what I mean. Like we're kind of getting a sense for what is really important and what is like, okay, this is okay to kind of push around. I think one of the things that is like a key factor to look for when a traumatic event has happened and you need to know whether or not you need to seek professional help is when, here are some of the signs.
All right. So when your behavior or their behavior, if you're looking out for someone else, is dangerous, reckless, or harmful, this can be things such as seeking that adrenaline rush. Self-harm.
Yes.
Is an example. Doing things adjacent to not caring about your life.
Yes.
I mean, even jaywalking, where you don't care if a car hits you, for example, is something that could be considered dangerous, reckless, or harmful.
Yes. Another one is they or you seem persistently depressed or anxious.
They or you start abusing substances such as drugs, cigarettes, or alcohol, or their use increases dramatically.
I also want to add vapes to this list.
Agreed.
I feel like that's also a big one that, is more mainstream as of right now. Another one, like we said before, they won't communicate about where they're going, what they're doing, or how they're feeling. So
this is something such as avoidance, avoiding talking to people, keeping to yourself. Dissociation can also be included in this.
I think it's really hard in teens, especially with this one, because even if there isn't a traumatic event, we're still kind of not communicative because, whatever parents and that whole mentality and just kind of figuring out how much we need to say and, like, again, teetering on that balance between independence and insecurity. But, another thing is if they don't or you don't seem to be showing any signs of recovery.
This, I feel like, comes a lot when you are trying to recover or you're trying to help someone recover, but they may not be putting as much effort as needed.
Or not even effort. It's just super challenging and there seems to be a lot of roadblocks.
Right. Your or their behavior does not make sense to you and can seem completely out of character. I feel like this applies more to other people looking in to another person.
So some of the results that can develop after a traumatic event, especially with teens, family problems can occur if, the family doesn't talk about it or the family misunderstands the teenager's behavior and assumes that they are just being difficult or taking advantage of the situation, which again I think we touched on a little bit more with that communicativeness and not wanting to talk about it. And I've seen and heard a lot of stories about stuff like that where someone will be labeled the problem child because they're more disruptive and reactive as a result of a traumatic event and they can't process it.
A lot of these I feel like are also family problems that aren't specific to traumatic events, though.
Yes.
For example, parents trying to keep a teenager from their peer group or criticize their choice of friends. Now, I can see this being a part of a traumatic event, but I can also see this being possibly a parent trying to look out for their child. I mean, sometimes your peer group that you're a part of may not be doing the best things. some friends that you may have trying to get you to vape, for example.
Oh, yeah.
And your parents seeing that, they might just be trying to look out for you. And I feel like looking at these problems that develop after a traumatic event doesn't necessarily mean that your family is dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm.
It may just be that your parents are trying to look out for you. I think that's really important to discern when it's harmful and when they're trying to help.
Yes. And I think that's a struggle. I think a lot of teens are, especially today, are very aware of whether or not their family is dysfunctional or not. And I think another thing to touch note on is, like you were saying, it can be years after a traumatic event that this happens, like generational trauma.
Absolutely.
Whereas as a result of how the parents grew up is why they tend to be more strict towards their children, and not necessarily the traumatic event for the teen, but more a trauma their parents might have experienced or their grandparents, or and that generational trauma has been passed down and built up and not processed, so that the family can build a more stable environment for their children, and then that those behaviors are thus passed on and creates a cycle. And then their parents try to get emotional support from their teenager.
That is a very interesting topic to touch on.
So to go a little bit more into that, I think that, might be as a result of when traumas happen more to the parents. And, of course, consult more from a mental health professional, and to research more into this. We can definitely go more into that. But, there are definitely different types of dysfunction in a family that can result from certain things, and it doesn't necessarily mean these are bad people, but processing is a huge thing.
Absolutely. And talking through things and not trying to brush it under the rug.
Yes. So breakdowns in communication can occur. A teenager may be deeply upset by an event, but despite this, they may not want to share their feelings with their parents. Some of the reasons for this include they are needing more time to absorb what has happened.
They're not wanting to acknowledge the event by talking about it.
They don't want to upset their parents. I think that's a huge one.
Absolutely. They are wanting to be strong for their parents and other family members.
They don't think their parents will understand them. So I think these are all, those three specifically, I think we've even touched a little bit on in other episodes, not necessarily traumatic events, but in general with maybe just normal parenting and, the struggles of growing up. I think back in episode 4, we talked about those family relationships, and one of the things that we said that is a very common excuse is that you didn't grow up in my time, you don't get it. And so I think that it definitely, again, like we said before, causes a breakdown in communication.
Also, I'd like to mention that, again, these aren't symptoms specific to just trauma. These can apply to a lot of things. And I feel like it is up to both the teenager and their parent to address these issues. I don't think it is fair specifically for either a teenager or a parent to blame the other for any of these.
Yes, agreed.
It is definitely something that would have needed to be worked through as a partnership rather than an authority figure and an obeyer mentality.
Yes. And I think that's really important in parents for any experience that their child has gone through. I think, like we said before, parents have a tendency, and this is no fault of their own, it's just, they're grown up now. They sometimes tend to forget that their children are still children, and so processing times are different, and understanding levels are different, and because we haven't matured as much as they have.
Another thing I'd like to mention is that sometimes as children we have not lived a long time. Compared to our parents, we've probably lived less than half of their life.
Yeah.
And when it comes to this, we haven't experienced as much as they have. Just like babies, for example. They cry over the littlest things because breaking a toy truck might be the worst experience that has ever happened to them. And the same comes with teenagers, where a traumatic event that the parents might have experienced more than once a teenager is experiencing for the first time, and it'll hit them harder than the parent. And I think that's harder to understand as you get older. It's harder to see how this event might affect a teenager compared to an adult who has experience.
I also think it's important to note that, if you experience that traumatic experience more than once, that increases your sensitivity and your your likeliness to develop PTSD. And it's also about how the parents themselves process trauma as well. If you're able to effectively process it, and then your child, your teen, is not processing it the same way, you can kind of guide them how to help do it in a healthy way. But to touch on what you were saying, in that we have not lived, nearly half of their life, teenagers, think that either their parents will tell them what to feel or what to do, but also they don't agree with their parents' point of view on the event and prefer to talk to their peers about it.
I mean, I feel like teens might find instead that peers help take their mind off of the event rather than tell them, as you said, what to think or what to do.
They also, I think, because, most peers are relatively on the same maturity level, they will feel a sense of more understanding because they're on the same level, versus that disconnect with the parents because they're more mature. And it's like, I compare it to, they have, it's kind of like the dimensional thing where it's just like you can't understand what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so, you don't get what they're saying. It's just like they've lived this experience, and it's kind of almost like if when your parents are like, oh, well, when you're older, you'll understand, and it sounds crazy, and then you're older and you're like, yeah, I do regret it, and my parents were right. And it's just because you've finally garnered that experience and knowledge to attribute to agreeing and making that decision.
And you talked about how peers are on that same maturity level as you, and how it's easier to talk to them because they understand. Talking to a parent might feel like you're talking to this much larger authority figure who is telling you what to do.
Yes.
And I feel like as a parent, your job when talking to a teenager with trauma is more to listen. Yes, you can offer advice, of course, and a teenager should listen. I mean, we all at one point in our lives have realized, wow, my parents were right about this.
Yes.
And as a teenager, trying to listen to your parent in the moment could be extremely helpful. But it's also on the parent to present that idea not as something that they have to do, but as advice for the future. I've gone through this.
Yes.
And I understand what you're going through, and I want to listen to you, but I also want to help you.
Yes.
And coming from that point of view as you're a friend, I want to help you. I want to be your partner when you're going through this, not as someone who's just telling you what to do.
And I want to touch on that a little bit more so that people don't get the wrong idea on what we're saying is, I think it's all about the steps and the process.
Absolutely.
Now, of course, parents, you, of course, should be, parenting your kids.
Oh, absolutely.
And helping them figure that out. But I think it's all about the methods of how you approach it and when. Timing is really huge and really important. And, one of the things that I struggle with is if I go to my parent about something and I just want to tell them what happened, I'm not necessarily looking for a solution. That's what I need in the moment. And at first, all I need to do is just process the event. And then I could come to you and say, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, I don't know what to do. What do you think I should do? Or if I start beginning to tell you this is how I'm choosing to handle it, and it's beginning to look like I'm in that space to start handling and not just processing the event, but handling it, that's where you can start inputting your advice. And to touch more on the friend aspect, we're not saying, you have to be friends with your child or you have to be friends with your parent. There, of course, is that line, but
oh, absolutely,
approaching it with a less, authoritarian,
viewpoint.
Do as I say approach, but more as, I'm here for you to confide in, and giving you that more friendly space.
In addition, opening yourself up to listen to your teenager opens your teenager up to listening to you as well. It makes it a lot easier for us as teenagers to listen to our parents. And of course, we want to listen to our parents. We have no intention of disobeying them.
Yeah.
We love to respect our parents. Respecting your parents is a really important thing, obviously. But knowing that your parents are listening to you and listening to how you feel before offering you a solution, it's really calming.
It is.
And it's really nice to hear that your parents understand before immediately giving you a solution.
Yeah. And I think that's part of creating that safe space in that environment and creating that open, my parents do understand feeling. And one of the things that we'll talk about a little bit later in this episode is that safe space that you need in order to process trauma and process, not even just trauma, but process events in general. You need a safe space. And that allows, by parents doing that, it allows them to create that safe space for their teens.
Agreed.
And I think that's a huge thing, and it's definitely important for people to do. So I think, one of the things that we can move into is what happens when you develop PTSD.
Right.
And that's usually harder for, teens and parents to manage because, it's a prolonged experience of trauma. And maybe more than one person in your family is experiencing that trauma as well, because, it could have happened to all of you or some of you, or maybe just that one person. So it's all really difficult to manage, especially with already, breakdowns in communication and stuff like that. So, in order to help your teenager resolve traumatic events, here, let's list out a few tips.
All right. So you can encourage, or even you can do this for yourself, you can encourage yourself to communicate without judging or advising them until they ask for your feedback. So we actually touched on this before, about your parents talking to you without advising you before you're ready. Yes. We also talked about this before. Oh, no, yeah, that's exactly right. Okay.
Yeah. And then, so the next tip we have here is show them that you really care for them and are genuinely interested and enjoy being with them. So this is, again, touching into creating that safe space. And that's important. And, if you're listening to this as a teenager, think about what you need from, your peers and people around you to create that safe space, and try to communicate that so you can process the stuff around you.
Agreed. You can negotiate changes in roles and responsibilities during recovery and being flexible. Don't try to stick rigidly to the way things were before the event.
Yeah. And I think that flexibility is a huge thing. I mean, trauma, shifts the way we view things, like we said earlier. And, if let's, for example, take like a death in the family and you're going to school, even just communicating with your teachers about that. I know in the past when we interviewed our teachers in that one episode, they were saying, if something happened that's more serious, allowing that student to maybe take more time to do their homework or maybe not take tests can help them process and allows them to devote more time and attention to rebuilding themselves and not having to throw themselves back into the daily normal way of life.
Also, this can be just for the teenager themselves, being flexible with your schedule and realizing that the way you had scheduled your life before, it might not work.
Yes,
especially during recovery.
And then continuing to give love, support, and trust even if things are extremely difficult. And this is, personally and for the people around you, if someone around you is experiencing that trauma and processing it, just continuously supporting them is a huge thing, especially if you're one of their main people in their support system. That's hugely important in allowing them to feel safe again. And then just for yourself, giving yourself that love and respect is huge so that you can feel whole again and you're not feeling betrayed by yourself.
Remember that the person going through trauma or yourself is the same person they were before the event. Obviously, there are going to be some changes.
Yes.
But overall, you are the same person you were.
Yep.
And last but not least, if asked, and specifically if asked, know that you are having a normal reaction to a frightening experience, and in time, these very strong reactions will subside.
And that's like, again, like she was saying, if asked, if you are on the giving end of this, where you're
Mm-hmm.
supporting someone, gently remind them that, these are normal things. And everybody, I think, feels like this, because that's not a normal way to feel on a
No.
normal day. However, this is a normal reaction. And I feel like any reaction is a normal reaction because we all process differently.
Absolutely. And also saying this isn't to brush off these feelings. Saying
No.
that these reactions are going to subside, you're going to be fine.
No. Yes.
That is not a healthy way to address trauma. It's the fact that you're there. I'm here to help you. This is a normal reaction. It is okay, and you can take your own time to recover.
Yes. So before we wrap up this segment, I just wanted to let you guys know that some of the resources that we used for this were the American Psychiatric Association, the APA, and we used their definition of trauma and also looked at, some of their resources for trauma.
Mm-hmm.
We also looked at the Better Health and oh my gosh, the Better Health channel,
Mm-hmm.
and they listed out, some of the common reactions for trauma in teenager, and then
We also use the National Library of Medicine and specifically the National Center for Biotechnology Information to understand the impact of trauma.
yes, okay, so I think all in all for this segment, we can kind of take away that trauma is not just a specific thing, not like it doesn't have to be a major event. It's more how the person perceives something and how they process it, and something that may be traumatic to someone may be not at all traumatic to somebody else.
And also making sure that you are able to lean on your support system, and if someone in your support system is going through something, making sure that you are available for them to lean on.
All your reactions are normal reactions. They're okay to have, and of course, you can, again, like Sophia said, rely on the people around you and know that recovery is a process. And,
Absolutely.
If it takes longer than others or if you bounce back right away, that's okay. Just, make sure that you are always taking care of yourself and making sure that you come back to that better, healthier version of yourself.
Also, not forgetting that you can use the help of a mental health professional.
Yes.
If you feel that is needed, and it is also completely okay for that to happen.
And it's highly recommended.
Absolutely.
Too. And it's not a weakness at all.
No.
And again, I would like to touch on that me and Sophia, again, are not experts.
No.
And we heavily researched for this episode, and they will, again, be all of our resources, my gosh, will be linked in their description below. Okay.
So that pretty much wraps up our tea journal for this week.
Welcome back to Chamomile Corner.
To recap, Chamomile Corner is where we'll go through skills to recenter yourself as well as strengthen your mental health.
We'll also discuss different mental health topics.
For today, we'll be discussing prioritizing mental health and recovery.
So let's start off with what is mental health.
So mental health is our emotional, psychological, and social well-being.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, especially today, are recognizing their mental health, and recognizing that it's very much tied to our physical health. And some of those examples are, you can feel burnout at the end of the day, your social battery's running out. That's one of my favorite terms.
Oh, absolutely.
And just anxiety, depression, the way you feel emotionally is very much, a healthy versus unhealthy, scope in life that we should tend to focus more on and make sure to take care of, as well as our physical health.
So how are we prioritizing our mental health?
So we can start off with finding space and time for yourself. So that's huge.
What do you mean by finding space?
So I think, like we were saying in our, achieving success and overworking in that whole episode, one of the things we talked about was like, people's tendency to go on autopilot and just work and continue working and just, not really stopping until they achieve something, and finding space for yourself. Taking time to just be with you and not necessarily working towards anything, providing something to anyone, just being there for you. That could just be taking a bath.
We talked a little bit about this in our previous episode, self-care for busy lives.
Yes,
That's also a really helpful resource for yourself to take a break from your life.
And so that's kind of what finding space and time for yourself. You need to, one of the things that I love that my mom says and that we talk a lot about in our family is if if you want something, you make time for it. And this is one of the things that a lot of people realize they need to actually make time for. It's not just something that comes as a result of finishing something and you're like, oh, now I have time for it. You do have to make time for it and, make sure that you're paying attention to what you need in your body.
Right.
So,
along with that, trying to heal your own body, sleep comes with that.
Yes.
And being able to maintain a healthy sleep schedule. Again, we talked about this before in the importance of sleep.
Yes.
Actually, we have an entire episode. And being able to regulate a healthy sleep schedule that's not under or oversleeping is extremely important. And there are obviously those late nights and early mornings that are unavoidable, but it's the process of maintaining a healthy sleep schedule when you can that's important.
Yes.
Sleeping at a good time, waking up at a good time, 7 to 8 hours is the most healthy. Even over that is unhealthy.
Yes.
You end up being more tired throughout the day.
Yeah. And if you want to think about that in a more micro setting, if you think about naps, and if it's commonly known that a 20 to 26 minute nap is best for, refreshing yourself and, getting back into that productive mood. Whereas if you sleep over that, then again, when you wake up, you feel groggy and tired. And then, again, like you said, that like going over 7 to 8 hours is not actually good. So one of the things I wished we had touched upon in that importance of sleep, and I can't believe we didn't, was your circadian rhythm.
Oh my God, you're right.
And that's literally all your sleep is. Like, that is your body's biological clock in, sleep-wake. And I think it's really important for people to tune into their circadian rhythm and kind of notice where it's at and fine-tune it so that it becomes a more healthy schedule. And that is part of finding space and time for yourself and prioritizing your mental health as well as your physical health. They're very much tied together.
In addition, you should be able to honor your needs. Sleep is obviously one of them.
Yes.
But along with that comes eating.
Yes.
And being able to take productive breaks. Productive breaks not being breaks that that are achievement based.
Yes. And that's huge because, even that in and of itself is causing your body to work towards something, and it's not truly a break. It's just, maybe a break from what you were doing before. And you need to be able to actually give your brain and your body a break, and that's important. So, one of those things that you can do in honoring your own needs is saying no when you want to say yes. And that's important in taking care of yourself, because that allows you, if you're a people pleaser and you constantly find yourself saying yes to things, you're not taking care of yourself as much as you are taking care of the people around you. So, and what it says here, so for this specific set of list of, I think, tips. What are we calling this? Like, it's like our tips to prioritizing your mental health.
Yes.
This is coming from Calm, which is a very widely used mental health and meditation app. I personally have it and love it and totally recommend it to people. But this is coming from their blog. And so one of the things they say about stop saying yes when you want to say no is your time is a limited and valuable resource. If you try to please everyone, you not only purchase a one-way ticket to burnout and resentment, which I think is really important to note, you also deny yourself the pleasure and growth of focusing on what you value. Be intentional with your time.
Absolutely.
And that's part of honoring what you need, which was another one of their, tips for prioritizing yourself.
Speaking of, like Sophia said, this is another one of their tips, is to tune into and honor your needs. It's essential to check in with ourselves. We spend a lot of time in front of screens as we can easily be disconnected from the body and what it needs. For example, are you thirsty, hungry, craving attention, or in need of a break? What kind of support do you need at this moment?
Yes.
Being on screens kind of pulls you away from those needs that you're going to need.
And I think the other thing is, where are you in your day? I find that when I'm working, again, you guys probably already know this if you've been listening, I need to be near a window, I need to be outside. So sun is really important to me, and that is part of honoring my needs. And if I'm feeling myself kind of dipping in energy, it's time for me to
go outside.
Not only just go outside, but maybe move my space, move my workspace, give myself a change of scenery. And I can't just work in the same place forever. The spot kind of gets draining, and I need, I feel as if moving really rejuvenates yourself.
Speaking of moving, another tip that the Calm blog gives is to move your body.
Yes.
We often find ourselves in screens all day and all night, and the drain of the screen does very little to inspire movement. So it's important to pre-plan opportunities to walk, dance, stretch, or exercise, all of which can improve your mood and reduce stress.
I think one of the important things is connecting to nature, connecting to where we ultimately first started and came from, and that's where our body really truly lives and connects. That's where we are, where we truly are. And it allows you to connect with yourself, but just connect presently with your surroundings. And that's important in maintaining your mental health, because I think, again, like I was saying in previous episodes, we get so wrapped up with results and where we're going in the future and all the busying things around us that we forget about where we are currently right now. And that's huge in just processing things. And so moving into the next and last tip I think we have here, asking help for when you need it.
So when life gets difficult, it is a common tendency to retreat, which can lead to isolation. We aren't meant to travel through hard times alone, and it is extremely important to reach out for support from trusted loved ones and mental health practitioners. And it does not make you weak to seek help. In fact, it makes you stronger because you're willing to accept the criticism that comes with.
Yes. So moving into, more to connect back to our trauma theme from the past one, recognizing problems and accepting where you are, which we've talked about, I think, in past episodes. When I say accepting where you are, I don't mean like accepting it and just saying like I'm not going to do anything about it, but more coming to terms with this is my starting point and I am okay with that.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing in starting to recover from a traumatic event or anything really, or just trying to grow and improve your life, is accepting your starting point. If you can't accept where you're starting, then how can you really truly move forward with the best of your abilities?
Absolutely. So let's move into trauma recovery. So to start, you can identify your triggers, which can be smells, sounds, etc.
One of the things I want to note before we dive a little deeper into this is not necessarily, in a set order.
Oh, no.
Also, this comes from a PTSD workbook that will be listed in our resources, that I think is a great resource for anybody who's trying to process a traumatic event. So most of these things have been pulled from this book. So let's dive a little bit deeper into identifying triggers.
Okay.
So, what are triggers?
So, triggers can be something that kind of sparks that initial response that you had to your trauma.
Brings you back to the event.
Exactly. And so that might give you that same adrenaline rush, that same flight response that you had felt initially.
This can be smells, sounds, etc. So one of the things you can do to utilize your triggers and help yourself, process trauma keeping a list of triggers, including a description of where you were and what was happening when the flashback occurred.
So by keeping a list, you can keep like a small little pocket journal for yourself. And of course, this in itself can be a little triggering.
Yes.
Having this journal that makes you identify and confront those triggers is exactly what helps make it desensitize these triggers. So the entire process of identifying your triggers is specifically to desensitize the effect they have on you. And
process
them. Exactly.
And I want to note that this isn't specifically the first step. So one of the things you want to do at first is kind of come to terms and accept that you have been in a traumatic experience, and then being open to the change and going through it, and also finding that safe space first, because it's important that you feel safe while you're processing these things and going through it, so that you can return to that space when something has triggered you.
In addition, not all of these steps are going to work for everyone. Also, they're not, again, as Sophia said, they're not steps in specific orders. Some things are going to work. Some things are too hard to do initially.
Yes.
A person's step to recovery is individual.
Yes, everyone's different.
Not individual as in you need to do it alone, but in that it's unique to the person.
Yeah. So one of the things you can do with triggers is also identifying ways you surpassed and got through this trigger, which can help you to continue to control them.
So this can also be documented in the journal we had mentioned before, where you identify those triggers.
Yeah. Now, next on our list is remembering is important in order to process the event.
It is not necessary to remember everything, but rather to recover enough information to process.
So one of the things that, again, this workbook that we use, which here I'll give you the title right now. So it's the PTSD Workbook, a simple effective techniques for overcoming traumatic stress symptoms. This is by Mary Beth Williams, Ph.D, LCSW, CTS, and oh my gosh, I don't know how to say this name. Soili, Poijula, hopefully, Ph.D. So this has been written by professionals. And one of the things they have noted is, one of the toughest things in trauma and traumatic events is those flashbacks and remembering. However, remembering is necessary, unfortunately, in order to process the event. So, as Sophia said, it is not necessary to remember everything, but rather to recover enough information to process the event. So when you process an event, you can kind of go through it and see what happened. And, if you're forcing yourself to forget about it, your body still remembers those, triggers, those stressors, and you're not allowing yourself to actually work through them. So
this remembering helps decrease fear association and allows you to leave them in the past.
Yes. And then it's one of the most important things about remembering is that safe space again. You want to be in a safer space when you do this, because you're not, you don't want to immediately fall back into this pattern and do something you might regret, or, have like that traumatic experience and like re-traumatize yourself, and that's, huge. So remembering again is important to process the event. One of the things you can do this is kind of walking yourself through it with a mental health professional or with someone that you trust, and kind of thinking about, okay, what happened? Because sometimes our brains intentionally block out parts of it.
Right.
So this can help when you kind of process sort of some of the memories. This can begin to start filling in other gaps, and then you might start remembering things that your brain had hidden in the past, and then you can continue moving through this. So moving into one of the, processing techniques we have is drawing.
So different drawing exercises can help you understand yourself and your traumatic experience. Okay. Why don't you touch more on that?
Okay, so this book, again, this workbook has 5 different drawing exercises listed here. So the first one they have here is "This is me, I am." This drawing shows you what you think about yourself. It is your self-portrait.
So by self-portrait, they don't necessarily mean you as in your face, more as in who you are, what makes up you.
Yes.
So what would be in your self-portrait?
Probably, my hair, my height, kind of things that physically identify me. And one of the things they have in here is in these drawings, when you draw yourself, how large are you? What facial expressions do you have? So, what are you doing? So these are all really important to finding who you are. So I probably draw myself, sitting or doing something I might enjoy, or, maybe even sitting with a friend or something like that. And again, it's important to know that they don't have to be great drawings.
No.
This does not require artistic ability. This is just a processing technique. But, in this first drawing, this is a drawing that shows you what you think about yourself. And it is, I want to say, even your internal self-portrait.
Agreed. And it, again, if you don't feel like it doesn't have to be a face. It doesn't have to be physical characteristics. It can be the things that make up you, like your hobbies.
Yes. So in the second drawing, it says, "This is my space." This drawing shows how you see your world, your position in it, and your reaction to it. Do you believe you have a space in your world? What are your relationships with significant others? Where do your fears, wishes, anger, depression, and personal strengths and weaknesses fit in? How do you tolerate your world in the present? Do you feel isolated and withdrawn, or included and part of the world around you?
So by creating this world, you're basically identifying everything in your life. And triggers are a part of this, as well as your trauma. Your trauma is a part of your world. And by kind of forcing yourself to visualize it and putting it on paper or on a screen or wherever you're drawing on, it allows you to confront what has happened.
Yes. So moving into the third drawing, "My Life's Road." This drawing is a visual history of your life, so it's like a timeline. And it can be drawn out however you want to. And it says, in drawing 3, show the ups and downs of your life in a linear way. Is your road straight, curvy, full of hills and valleys? Just kind of, show where you've been. And it's important to be authentic and true to yourself and try not to block out anything, because this is, again, in the process of
Confronting
things. Moving into the fourth drawing, "My Family and Me." This drawing is a portrait of your family and your current relationships and family systems. It shows you how you view your family and your position in it. So drawing 4 obviously is self-explanatory. It's your family.
Absolutely.
So moving into 5, "This is me, I am," which is kind of circling back to the first one. This second self-portrait is completed after 3 intermediate drawings are done. Do you see yourself as you did before the drawing and drawing the other 3 drawings?
So this is essentially re-examining who you are as a person after you have confronted everything individually that make up who you are.
Yes.
Yourself, your surroundings, your ups and downs, all of the above. Who is in your support system?
Yes. So, if I were to draw this, and let's say, we're talking about, like, my life's road, and we're looking at all my ups and downs, and then I start drawing my family figures, I can see how my family systems and support systems have evolved as a result of this, road and the curves and the bumps. And after drawing these, it's important to ask yourself, what did you learn about yourself in completing these drawings? So ultimately, the use of these drawings is to first identify who you are and how you relate to the world, which can help you begin to start processing things and processing thus your traumatic experience. And you can even do this for non-traumatic experiences and just processing anything. So moving into the next thing, finding safety and security, like we were saying before. It is important to have safety while processing an event that is traumatic in order to effectively process.
So by doing this, a safe space can be created or entered.
Yes.
So for example, you can create your own safe space. You are able to surround yourself in a place, like it said, where you feel safe, such as a place that may have felt unaffected by the traumatic experience.
And that can be mental too, you know, thinking of a place that makes you feel calm and safe and loved and supportive. But you can even enter that space with a space that you already know exists and makes you feel safe.
A lot of people tell you to find your happy place. Find that place where you just feel satiated and calm. That can be both mentally and physically, like Sophia said.
And one of the things that I always often hear and I love to hear is my safe space sometimes isn't even, or like my happy place isn't even sometimes a place. It's people. And that is totally okay. And that's totally a safe space. People are totally a safe space for you. So when finding this safety and security, you know, one of the things that you can use to help create safety and security when dealing with other things is relaxation and breathing techniques. So this can include, you know, deep breathing, exercises, you know, and just, you know, so, okay, one of the things we can say is staying grounded. So the word grounded means staying present in current time in contrast to spacing out or dissociating. You may have some particular ways to remain present when things come up that remind you of trauma or when you are dealing with past experiences. So this is one of the things that can help you bring yourself back, calm yourself down. Okay, so some of these things include...
And some of these things are tips that trauma survivors themselves have talked about that made them feel grounded. So, for example, using all of your senses to be aware of your physical environment, then talk to others about it. We actually talked about this with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method.
Yes. And I love grounding, and it's something I've talked about a lot with my family who are mental health professionals. I just love the analogy of it and feeling like I'm rooting myself in place and, you know, saying I am here in the now, right now, and, you know, this is not affecting me.
And a lot of it is bringing yourself back to the physical so that you can take yourself out of whatever mental struggle you may be feeling.
Being aware of your movements in the space as you walk also can help you stay grounded, you know, being really present in the moment, and then making a plan for the day and sharing that plan with someone else.
And you can realize that a lot of these tips are based on talking to other people, because communication with humans is, we are social creatures.
Yes.
And talking to someone else can really help you, again, untie the knots that might be in your brain and allow you to bring yourself back to the present and allow things to come out one step at a time.
Yes. So when creating your space, your safe place, you know, one of the exercises you can do is, if you could create a safe place in your present physical reality, and if money and time were no consideration, where would your safe place be? And then after taking that into account, stay in that place. Look around you. What do you see? So concentrating on colors and visual elements that let the feeling of safety flow in.
Then concentrate on sounds or silences that belong in your safe space, feeling that they bring the feeling of safety, and let it grow stronger in you.
Then the smell of odors of your safe place, and let the good feeling flow in.
Whom do you see there?
Concentrate on feelings of safety that others bring.
What do you feel in your body when imagining your safe space?
Concentrate on that feeling.
Then open your eyes and look around you.
And then you can kind of write that down and write down what you experienced, and you can kind of create that place for you and then find a single word to describe that space. So from now on, whenever you are in distress or feel the need, you can return to your good and safe place and draw strength from it.
Of course, I'm always safe.
So, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to respond.
Sorry, I had to make the pun.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Sophia's safe.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm so funny.
Okay, so like we were saying, another thing you can do is deep breathing exercises, and, you know, those are really good. So you can lie down on a blanket or a rug on the floor, bend your knees upward, and move your feet until they are about 8 inches apart with your toes turned slightly outward.
You can scan your entire body and identify any places that you hold tension.
Put one hand on your abdomen and one on your chest.
Inhale slowly through your nose into your abdomen so that it pushes your hand up. Your chest should move only a little bit. Hold your breath while you count to 5.
Smile slightly and then exhale through your mouth, taking as long as possible. Make a shushing sound as you exhale.
Repeat this at least 5 times, perhaps eventually increasing the amount of time you spend deep breathing from 5 to 10 minutes.
So this is something you can do, more than once, and it allows you to kind of calm your nervous system, which is one of the things that I really like. Another thing that you can do is basic progressive relaxation sequence. So I think this is even helpful, and I remember my mom telling me to do this if I couldn't get to sleep, and it would just kind of help your body refocus on other things.
Okay.
So this sequence takes you from your head through your neck, shoulders, arms, hands, chest, back, stomach, hips, legs, and feet. So it's basically a whole body scan.
Okay.
But you're focusing on, specific elements as you go. So one of the things you can do, so you start by wrinkling your forehead.
Squint your eyes tightly.
Open your mouth wide.
Push your tongue against the roof of your mouth.
Clench your jaw tightly.
Push your head back into a pillow.
Bring your head forward to touch your chest.
Roll your head to your right shoulder.
Roll your head to your left shoulder.
Shrug your shoulders up as if to touch your ears.
Vice versa with your... Shrug your right shoulder up as if to touch your ear.
Shrug your left shoulder up as if to touch your ear.
Hold your arms out and make a fist with each hand.
One side at a time, push your hands down into the surface where you are practicing.
One side at a time, make a fist. Bend your arm at the elbow and tighten up your arm while holding the fist.
Take a deep breath and hold.
Tighten your chest muscles.
Arch your back.
Tighten your stomach area.
Push your stomach area out.
Pull your stomach area in.
Tighten your hips.
Push the heels of your feet into the surface where you are practicing.
Tighten your leg muscles below the knee.
Curl your toes under as if to touch the bottoms of your feet.
Bring your toes up as if to touch your knees.
So basically what you're doing here is building a lot of tension, and then that release is like immediately calming and creates that, that feeling of relaxations. So that tension kind of like, I don't want to say replicates a lot of things, but it's just like, you can kind of feel what I mean if you do it. Mm-hmm. So I remember my mom telling me to do this. She's like, tense up every bit of your body. Work from your head down to your toes. And then hold it and then let go. And that's a relaxation technique that you can do. And it requires a lot of focus, which brings your attention to yourself, which can help be another, version of grounding yourself and relaxing yourself when you're having a flashback, and can be used while you're trying to process it with a different technique.
Speaking of dealing with flashbacks, you can deal with these flashbacks by building dual awareness.
So this is a really first and crucial step when dealing with flashbacks. So what dual awareness is allows someone to be aware that they are in the present environment and not in the traumatic environment while envisioning it.
So you can build dual awareness by recalling an experience and noting physical feelings. Then bring your awareness back to the room and noticing your physical surroundings and feelings.
So an exercise you can do for this is remembering a recent mildly distressing event, something you were slightly anxious or embarrassed. What do you notice in your body? What happens in your muscles? What happens in your gut? How does your breathing change? So it's basically, noticing how your body reacts and noting the physical feelings. Then bringing your awareness back to the room and noticing your physical surroundings and feelings.
So this can be the color of the walls, the texture of the rug. What is the temperature of the room? What do you smell? Does your breathing change as your focus of awareness change?
Yes. So I like this one. This builds your dual awareness. And then after that, you can start to confront, dealing with your flashbacks. And one of the techniques that are listed here to use is the VCR technique. Now,
do you know what a VCR is?
I do know what a VCR is.
So do I.
However, and this is what my parents like to joke about. It's like, the kids now don't know what VCRs and Walkmans and da-da-da-da, like all the old school stuff. But it's basically like a movie. So pretend you have a movie on. It's like And, you can replay things, you can rewind and fast forward and replay things.
So the VCR technique is to repeat the memories in small sections and fast forward, rewind, and add things to section to give yourself a sense of control over the memory. So essentially, you're repeating a memory that where you may have felt out of control, and you're reestablishing your feeling of control in that situation to try to mitigate your flight or fight response.
So you're putting these memories on repeat in a shortened form, hence, the VCR tape. And then, like Sophia said, then you can play the memory in small sections using on-off controls. So as if you're playing a movie, you can fast forward or rewind, and these actions, again, give you a sense of choice and control about remembering. When you add something else to the beginning or end of the memory, you can frame it. Perhaps an alternative solution to what happened or an image of your safe place. So this is helping your body to reform and, confront those flashbacks. And then another technique that is listed is the rewind technique. So go for it.
Okay. So put yourself in an empty movie theater where you will watch the event as well as in the projection room, where you can stop, and when you realize you will survive or the memory fades.
Okay, so she kind of skipped over a line. You skipped over a line. Okay. It's okay.
Put yourself in an empty movie theater where you will watch the event as well as in the projection room, where you can watch yourself watching the event. Play the event and stop when you realize you will survive or the memory fades.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. So this is a little bit more of a complicated one. So this is recommended to do with, probably a mental health professional, as this can, trigger you again and you want someone to be able to ground you and bring you back. But basically what this is you're stopping and you're envisioning in your mind, you're in a movie theater, like the description said, and it's empty and you're watching. So basically the movie that will be playing is the traumatic experience.
Okay.
Now taking yourself out of your body, floating yourself up to, where they project the movie from, so the projection room. And so when you look down, you can see yourself watching the movie, but you're also aware of your presence, quote unquote, in the projection room. So it's kind of dual awareness again here. You're kind of watching it from two different perspectives. Now, Sophia said, play the event and stop when you realize you will survive or the memory fades. So you're kind of controlling when the movie stops. So you're watching yourself watch the movie. And when you realize you're going to survive or the memory again starts to fade, stop the movie. Now moving on.
Now move into the film as if it were happening to you in the moment, except backwards.
So basically what this is now you're leaving that space of the projection room and you're re-entering, you yourself watching it, except now you're in the film. So you're basically reliving the traumatic experience. You're putting yourself back in that space. You are the film. You are in the film. You are the actress or whatever.
Except this time it's running backwards.
Yes. So when it's running backwards, this practice takes, this takes practice. So this method takes practice.
And it can uncover new details as parts of the memory resolve and allows you to process and get a clear picture of the event.
So this is kind of like the two film technique. So the first film is when you watch it from the projection room, and the second film is the rewind. You will not watch the rewind, but you will experience it on the screen, seeing it as if it were happening to you now with all of its sounds, smells, feels, tastes, and touch sensations. You are actually in the film, re-experiencing the event. However, again, like we said, it is all happening backwards from after the traumatic event until before the event happening. This re-experiencing takes practice and must be done rapidly. Remembering a trauma of about 1 minute would mean having a rewind of about 10 to 15 seconds. So this can help you to kind of really garner that remembering process and be able to grasp the concept of what happened and start piecing it together, in a more tangible way so that you're able to process it more effectively, and you can, again, like I said earlier, start filling in gaps. So
these are not the only steps in recovery. However, these are starting points and can be applied to not just traumatic events, but helping to process other things.
one of the things that we also have here is writing and journaling. So that can be, the next best thing you can do. So when you're confronting something. So writing about what happened can help release it. So writing and, of course, journaling is a form of release.
It can encourage changes with how you view traumas or the experiences. And sometimes this could be too traumatizing or re-traumatizing, depending on the extremity of the event.
So this is kind of where you gauge how ready you are to, process and deal with this sort of, event in that way, because you're making sure you want to recount as much as you can, including all the ups and downs and the details that, are traumatizing to you in order to process this.
And this can help identify your experience and identify the triggers that you may feel.
And also just identifying what happened and coming to terms with it, and this allows you to help move further into that processing. So these are all really important things to talk about, even when you're not processing trauma and you're just, maybe if you had a fight with somebody and you can't, and it's all jumbled up in your brain and you can't even remember exactly what happened, writing it out or kind of picturing it out and playing it out in your mind can kind of help you remember things and kind of help you gain more bearings on what happened, and then begin to process it and decide how best to move forward.
Agreed. So basically, the steps to recovery are not set in stone. They are unique to the person who had the traumatic experience, and it is important to know where you are. It is important to know where your first step is and how ready you are to progress.
And again,
Go ahead.
And again, these are not the only steps in recovering from trauma, and it is highly recommended that, you consult a mental health professional while doing this.
Agreed.
So that you really do get the best ways of coping and moving through this process effectively.
So, again, some of the steps are identifying triggers, remembering it is important in order to process the event, drawing, writing or journaling, finding safety and security, dealing with flashbacks, and re-experiencing.
All right, and to note again, some of the resources that we used again was the CALM blog, and then we also consulted the National Institute of Mental Health to talk about how to cope with traumatic events. And then again, like I said earlier, we used the PTSD Workbook by Mary Beth Williams and Soili Poijula, who are both Ph.Ds and are professionals in this field. Okay. In addition, Sophia and I are not experts by any means, so if you feel you need help, please contact a medical or mental health professional.
Also, utilize the Suicide Prevention Hotline by dialing 998, which will also be provided in the description below.
Okay, that wraps up Chamomile Corner.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode.
I hope you'll join us next week on
Sip and Spill.